When I moved to this small town a few weeks ago, I thought it would be the perfect place to find my spark again. I was 32 and always loved photography, but I was stuck. The cottage I rented was right by dense woods, and I felt like the fading charm would inspire me. Looking back, I wish I had picked somewhere else. On my second night, I stepped outside to review my photos. I wanted to find something special. That's when I heard it, a child's laughter echoing from the woods. It pulled me outside, and I felt curious. But as soon as I stepped away from the cottage, the laughter stopped. An eerie silence followed. The trees loomed, and I felt like someone was watching me. Days went by, and I stayed in the cottage, but things felt off. I heard whispers when I looked through the lens. They were soft, like a breeze, but somehow distinct. They felt like they were calling my name. Every time I glanced at the tree line, there was nothing, just shadows shifting in the dusk. I worried I was losing my mind. Sometimes I could see children playing in the distance, their laughter drifting my way, but as I moved closer, they would disappear. I felt uneasy and confused. Maybe it was just my imagination, but that feeling gnawed at me. I tried to shake it off, but the uneasiness clung to me like a thick fog. One evening, while taking pictures, I felt something cold brush against my skin. I turned quickly, but all I saw was the quiet forest. I snapped a few photos, feeling an urgent need to capture something, anything. When I looked at the pictures later, I saw strange patterns, faces. I wasn't sure. One photo seemed to show a child, but when I zoomed in, the face blurred away. That night, the laughter came back, louder this time. I slipped out of bed, my heart pounding. Outside, the air felt colder, and my breath came out in puffs. I called out, asking if anyone was there. The laughter swallowed my voice. I stood there shivering, unsure if I should explore or run inside. The cold wrapped around me, drawing me deeper into the night. Then I heard the whispers again. "Why are you here?" It felt muffled and distant. I looked around, panic rising, but only the trees greeted me with silence. Then I heard it again, softer this time. "Why are you with them?" I spun around, alarmed. There was no one, just the trees and shadows. My skin crawled. I couldn't shake the terror. I stumbled back toward the cottage, my heart racing. I locked the door behind me, gripping the knob like it was the only thing keeping me safe. I stared out the window at the woods, waiting for something to happen. It felt wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there was not done with me yet. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained. The night's events weighed heavily on me. I avoided the window, afraid I'd see something frightening staring back. I had to pull myself together. I made coffee and opened my laptop, staring blankly at the screen. My work had gone nowhere. After a few hours of avoidance, I decided to get out. I needed fresh air. Maybe there were answers in the woods, or at least some clarity. I threw on my jacket and grabbed my camera, hoping to capture something that would spark my creativity. As I stepped outside, the chill made me shudder. The woods were alive, but this time it felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, almost electric. I pushed through the underbrush, the trees closing in around me, their limbs like fingers reaching down. I felt the whispers waft through the branches. It was subtle but clear. "Come play." Shivers ran down my spine. It was just a child's voice, right? I hesitated but pushed on. I walked deeper and deeper, hoping to find a clearing or some sign of life. Instead, I stumbled onto a small, half-hidden path. It wound away from the main trail and tangled into the thick brush. My heart raced. I knew I shouldn't go further, but curiosity pulled me in. I followed the path until the trees opened into a small glade. Sunlight poured in, brightening the area. It felt almost magical. But as I stepped in, a chill swept over me. My breath came out visible, like a ghost. And then I saw it, a pile of old toys, forgotten and coated in a layer of moss. I moved closer, my camera in hand. The toys looked sad and lonely, the once bright colors dulled by time. I noticed a small wooden horse with a broken leg. It reminded me of something from my childhood, something I couldn't quite place. My fingers reached out to touch it, but I hesitated as an unsettling feeling washed over me. That's when I spotted something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement in the bushes nearby. I turned quickly, my heart racing. Nobody was there. The laughter echoed again, and it felt closer. "Join us!" It beckoned now, clearer than before. Panic surged within me. I turned to head back the way I came, but the path seemed to shift. The trees felt tighter, their branches casting long, twisted shadows. I could almost hear them whispering, "Stay with us." I stumbled as my heart raced, feeling as if the woods themselves were closing in. In my frantic escape, I tripped over a root but caught myself. Then something caught my eye on the ground, a faded photograph. I picked it up, and my breath caught in my throat. The photo showed a group of children, their faces bright with joy. But as I looked closer, their smiles seemed too wide, almost unnatural. I flipped it over. Written in smudged ink were the words, "Don't let them leave." My heart dropped. I had to get out. I sprinted back, the laughter fading behind me, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent with every step. They transformed into desperate cries. When I finally burst out of the woods, I glanced back, breathing heavily. Something was watching me from the shadows. I ran toward the cottage, my mind racing with questions. I had to understand what this place was hiding, but part of me didn't want to know. I slammed the door behind me and locked it tight. I couldn't shake the feeling that my time was running out. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence inside the cottage felt suffocating. I locked the door, but the whispers tugged at my mind. "Stay with us." They echoed like a broken record. I needed a plan. Sitting on the couch, I pulled out the photograph again. The children's faces stared back at me. I didn't know them, but they felt strangely familiar, as if I had seen them somewhere before. The woods had swallowed their secrets, but maybe I could find a way to retrieve them. Instead of wallowing in fear, I decided I had to uncover the truth. I grabbed my laptop, intent on researching the area. Maybe there were records, stories, or even townsfolk who could shed light on what I had experienced. After all, a hidden path and a pile of forgotten toys in the woods couldn't just be ignored. As I typed, the odd feeling of being watched crept back. I glanced at the windows, half expecting a face to be peering inside. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor, Greg. "Hey, sorry to bother, but I saw you running from the woods. Everything okay?" I felt a sudden wave of relief. I hurriedly typed back, "Not really. Can we talk?" He replied almost instantaneously, "Sure, I can come over." Minutes later, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it cautiously, peering through the crack to see Greg's concerned expression. "Hey, what happened? You looked like you saw a ghost," he said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind him. "I found a strange path in the woods. There were old toys, and, I don't know how to explain it, but something didn't feel right. I think the woods are hiding something." He raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over his face. "Old toys? So what? Kids leave stuff behind all the time." "You don't understand. There was this photo, and the kids—" I paused, realizing how crazy I sounded. Their smiles, they were off, and then the whispers, "I'm not imagining things." Greg shifted uncomfortably, and I could tell he didn't believe me. "Maybe you just need a break. You've been in isolation too long, and the woods can play tricks." I shook my head, panic igniting again. No, you don't know what I felt. I need to know what's going on." Before Greg could respond, a loud crash came from the direction of the window. We both jumped, eyes wide, and turned towards the noise. I rushed over, fear clawing up my throat. I pulled the curtain aside. My breath hitched as I saw something moving outside, weaving between the trees. My heart raced when it stopped and turned toward the house. A child stood there, face hidden in shadow. "Help us!" The voice was a mix of laughter and despair. My legs turned to lead and I couldn't speak. Greg grabbed my shoulder. "What the hell is that?" Before I could answer, the child reached out a hand, beckoning us to come closer, and just as swiftly as it had appeared, it vanished into the depths of the trees. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here, now." As I turned to grab my things, I felt a rush of movement from behind me. I turned back, and my heart sank. The spectral figure stood behind Greg, and this time the laughter didn't fade. It surged, echoing around the room. I stumbled back, my eyes wide as the figure stretched forward, its laughter turning into something jagged and cruel. Greg swung around just in time to see it. His face went pale, and I could see the shock creeping into his features. "Get it away from me," he shouted, backing up against the wall. The laughter morphed into a cacophony filled with lingering childlike giggles that felt both innocent and sinister. Each echo felt like ice dancing along my spine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my feet felt anchored to the floor. The figure's face remained hidden, but I could sense its gaze piercing through the shadows, focusing on Greg. "Stand back," I finally managed to yell, grabbing for anything as a weapon, a lamp, a chair, anything. It was absurd. How could any of this be real? In that moment, the figure raised its hands, almost playfully, and the room turned cold. A shiver washed over me, and I felt the weight of forgotten memories press down, like the air was suddenly thick with dread. The laughter stopped. All I heard was Greg's ragged breathing and my own pounding heart. I noticed the shadows stretching and swirling, morphing, twisting into a shape that made my stomach turn. Greg looked at me, panic flashing in his eyes. "What do we do?" The figure vanished, only to reappear at the window with the same childlike form. The hand beckoned again. "Help us," it called, the voice weighing heavy like a forgotten song. I took a deep breath, my instincts screaming to run, but curiosity tethered me. "Greg, we can't just ignore this. We need to figure out what it wants," I said, my voice steadying even as my insides turned. He shook his head, eyes darting around the room. "No, this is too much. We don't know what we're dealing with." The lights flickered above us and shadows danced across the walls, deepening the darkness. I glanced at the front door. The outside world was just a few steps away. But what if leaving meant something worse? "Just give me a second, let's not panic," I urged, heart racing. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the back of the cabin. It felt like it came from the basement, but I couldn't be sure. The noise pulled both our gazes, uncertainty pooling in the air. "What was that?" Greg whispered, stepping toward the hall with trepidation. "I don't know, but we have to check. It might be important," I replied, despite the fear curling in my chest. He hesitated. "We shouldn't split up." I nodded, but the drive to uncover the truth pushed me forward. I quietly made my way towards the hall, glancing back at Greg, who looked terrified. "Stay close," I warned. We moved together, inching toward the basement door, every step echoing with potential disaster. Just as I reached the handle, I felt a sudden chill brushing against my back. Then everything went dark. The darkness swallowed us whole. For a moment, I couldn't see anything. My heart raced in my chest, the silence pressing in on me like a heavy blanket. I reached for Greg, my hand flailing in the empty space, searching for something solid to hold on to. "Greg!" I called out, my voice trembling. "Are you still there?" A shaky reply came from somewhere to my right. "Yeah, I'm here. What just happened?" "I don't know," I admitted, trying to keep my breathing under control. "But we need to find a light." As if on cue, a soft glow flickered back to life, spilling dim light from the flashlight Greg had dropped earlier. I turned to him, relieved to see him crouch down, rifling through his backpack. "There's a lantern in here," he said, his fingers trembling as he fumbled with the switches. "I just need a second." The glow intensified as he turned it on. I breathed out a sigh of relief just as the figure's haunting giggles echoed again, bouncing off the walls like a sinister lullaby. "What was that?" Greg whispered, his voice barely above a breath. I don't know, I stammered, my heart racing again. It sounded like it came from the basement. We exchanged glances, and I could see the fear etched on his face, hardening into a determination. We have to go down there. We can't back out now. Nodding, I led the way to the basement door, each step feeling like we were approaching an abyss. My stomach twisted as I unlatched the door, the creak of the wood echoing through the stillness. As we descended the stairs, the chill in the air intensified. Shadows danced around us, playing tricks on my mind. Every time I thought I saw something move, I could feel Greg stiffen beside me. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded slowly, the hairs on my arms prickling. "It's cold." At the bottom of the stairs, a faint light glimmered in the corner of the room. It flickered like a dying flame, drawing me closer. As we approached, I noticed an old trunk, its wood warped and peeling. "Is that what made the noise?" Greg asked, his voice dropping lower. "I think so," I replied tentatively, crouching down to inspect it. Something inside rattled softly, and my heart lurched. "What if it's dangerous?" he warned, his eyes wide. I wanted to tell him to stay back, but curiosity surged through me. I have to know. With a deep breath, I unlatched the trunk, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The lid creaked upwards, revealing its contents wrapped in tattered cloths. Just as I was about to pull the fabric away, a loud crash echoed from above, making us both jump. The lights in the cabin flickered violently, plunging us back into darkness. "That's enough!" I shouted, heart racing. Then I heard it, a soft whisper lingering in the air like an insidious secret. "Help us!" I froze, my instincts screaming. I turned to Greg, his face now drained of color. "What do we do now?" he asked, panic creeping back into his voice. I couldn't answer. The whisper wrapped around us, and the shadows began to dance again. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The darkness closed in again, even with the lantern flickering beside us. I felt more exposed than ever, like a moth drawn to a flame, and the sinister whisper echoed in my mind. "Help us!" It felt like a command more than a plea. "Greg," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "what if something is trapped down here?" His reaction was almost primal. "Let's just leave. Let's get out of here." I wanted to agree, but curiosity gnawed at me. "We can't just walk away. What if it's connected to the trunk?" Before he could respond, the trunk seemed to shift. The sound of something rattling inside was now louder, more desperate. It drew me in. Without thinking, I reached out toward the fabric, my fingers trembling, heart pounding in my chest. I pulled the cloth away. Underneath was a collection of old photographs, their edges yellowed with time and some stained. A chill ran down my spine as I flipped one over. It was a close-up of a little girl. She had dark hair and an almost too wide smile. At the back, scrawled in faded ink, were the words, "Find me." "Creepy, right?" Greg said, but I could hear the hitch in his voice. "Yeah, but what does it mean?" Before he could answer, the whisper returned, this time more insistent. "Find us." I felt my stomach drop. The cold air thickened, wrapping around us like a fog. "Maybe it's telling us to look for something. Maybe it's not a ghost," I said, attempting to piece things together, but my rational mind clashed with the deep-rooted fear creeping through me. Then the trunk began to shake. Greg backed away, his eyes wide with panic. "This isn't right, Ashley. We have to go." "Wait, just give me a second." I was losing my grip on the situation, but I couldn't drag myself from the lure of the trunk. The fabric fell away further, revealing another object, a small, rusted box, heart-stoppingly familiar. It looked exactly like the one my grandmother had kept at her house, and she always told me stories about it. "Secrets inside," she'd say. "If you open it." Greg was breathing heavily now, panic rising in his tone. "Ashley, I'm serious." But I didn't listen. I felt that I had crossed a line, and I needed to know what was inside this box. I reached for it, my hands shaking as I unlatched the rusted clasp. Then everything went dark. The lantern flickered out, but in that inky blackness, a piercing scream rang through the basement, sharp as glass. My eyes strained to see anything, but my world was swallowed whole. "Greg!" I shouted, my heart racing, but silence greeted me. I pulled back, instincts kicking in. My feet scrambled on the cold floor, looking for the stairs, but the air felt thick. Panic bent my breath. "Greg!" And then I heard it. A soft sound, like whispering. But now they weren't words. They felt more like a chant, rhythm pounding through the stillness. It was coming from the trunk. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. For a second, I just stood there, rooted in dread, knowing that whatever lay ahead was bound to change everything. Then I caught a glimpse, the glint of a reflection from the open trunk. Ashley. I turned toward the sound, realizing I could no longer be sure where Greg had gone. The chant grew louder, wrapping around me like a heavy embrace. I stilled, my heart pounding, caught in some invisible web. "Ashley," echoed again, but this time it wasn't just a name. It felt like an unfamiliar hand, clasping my shoulder, urging me closer. "Stop it!" I shouted, the words fueled by fear. "Who's there?" Silence fell once more, a thick wall of quiet that left my ears ringing. I could hear my own breathing echoing back at me, sharp and quick. I edged forward, towing the edge of the light from the lantern's last flicker. The trunk loomed before me, its lid slightly ajar as if inviting me in. I had to know what it wanted. With a trembling hand I reached out, and the metal felt cold against my skin. I swallowed hard, steeling myself. "What do you want?" I whispered into the dark. In response, the air turned icy, and the box cracked open. A rush of stale air hit me, carrying a stench that reminded me of something forgotten long ago. I fought the urge to recoil. Instead, I leaned closer, heart racing. Inside, crumpled pieces of paper lay strewn about. That's when I saw it. A faded photograph, eerily similar to the one I had flipped earlier, but this one was torn, frayed at the edges, revealing just a hint of the girl's face, her wide smile marred by a long scratch that cut through her eyes like a scar. "Find me," came the whisper again, stronger this time, demanding, almost angry. I jerked back. "What are you?" But the question faded into the shadows. "Greg!" I called again, more desperate now. I was utterly alone, and fear began to weave itself into every crevice of my mind. I turned from the trunk and stumbled blindly in the dark, searching for the stairs, for the exit, but my foot snagged on something. A dull thud echoed through the stillness as I fell forward right into the cold dirt floor. My palms scraped against the rough surface, and my pulse quickened. I couldn't stay here. It was then I felt it, a presence. I raised my head, straining to see in the dark, and my thoughts raced. Was Greg playing some kind of prank? But something told me he wouldn't be that quiet. I pushed myself up, the darkness closing in again. I stumbled, hands outstretched, trying to find my way back to the stairs. Instead, I bumped into the chest, still trembling and softly whispering. The need to open it flared up again, but I couldn't afford another look. Not now. In that moment the whispers turned to laughter, chilling, mocking laughter that echoed through the basement. It sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I had to escape. "Greg!" I shouted one last time, knowing it was futile. I raced to the stairs, my breath coming in bursts. Just as my fingers grazed the cool railing, I felt a hand on my back, cold and firm. I gasped, spinning around, but the basement was empty again. The laughter faded, yet a weight settled in my chest. Something was very wrong here. As I made it to the first step, my pulse hammered in my ears. Maybe it wasn't just a coincidence that Greg had disappeared. I could feel it in my bones. I was not alone. Then, through the shadows, I saw something, shapes moving, emerging from the very darkness that swallowed me whole. My heart sank. Whatever was in the trunk wanted more than just to be found. It wanted to be freed. I couldn't think. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out of that basement and never look back. But the shapes in the darkness moved closer, their forms becoming clearer. They were not just shadows. They were figures, almost human but distorted, as if the darkness had twisted their features into something grotesque. Panic surged through me. I bolted for the stairs, my heart racing, legs pumping. I felt breath on my neck, a chill that made my skin crawl. That whispered laughter echoed again, this time taunting. I stumbled over my own feet, desperate for the exit. "Greg!" I yelled, voice breaking. I half-turned, half-sprint, glancing back at the darkness. The figures had halted, but I saw their eyes, two faint glimmers that cut through the shadows, locked on me with fierce intensity. My stomach dropped. I finally reached the stairs, grabbing the banister and pulling myself up. The wooden steps creaked beneath me, a familiar noise that now sounded like a warning. "What's going on?" I gasped to myself, the desperation rising in my throat. I was in a daze, fighting to understand how Greg could just vanish in this empty house. I couldn't shake the feeling that he had stumbled upon whatever had taken hold of this place. When I made it back to the main floor, I slammed the basement door shut, panting heavily. I pressed my back against it, my mind racing. Should I even check the house? What if those things followed me? I quickly evaluated my surroundings. The place had always felt eerie, but now it was suffocating. I glanced down the dark hallway, half expecting to see Greg's tall figure emerge, a casual smile on his face. But the silence crushed that hope. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to move. I shuffled over to the living room, searching for anything that could explain what I had just experienced. The lantern still flickered, casting long shadows against the walls. I needed to find something, a clue, anything. Then I noticed it, a scrap of paper on the coffee table. I picked it up, hands shaking. My heart sank as I read the words scrawled across it. "Help me find my way back. They want my soul." Chills ran down my spine. It was signed with a name I recognized, Ashley, the same name that haunted my mind, echoing from the basement. My thoughts spiraled. Was this the girl from the photograph? What had happened to her? Determined, I scanned the room for more answers. As I rifled through a stack of dusty books, a crash echoed from the kitchen. I froze. Someone, or something, was in the house with me. Without thinking, I rushed towards the sound. I had to find Greg. I had to know if he was all right. With every step, dread built within me, but so did a flicker of resolve. I was ready to confront whatever lay ahead, desperate to unravel the mystery behind Ashley and the shadows. But as I stepped into the kitchen, I froze. The door was wide open, swinging slightly as if inviting me to step into whatever nightmare lay beyond. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing just outside, waiting. I squinted, trying to make out the figure in the dim light. My heart raced. It was hard to tell, but I could see something moving just beyond the threshold. It shifted, almost impatiently, as if sensing my hesitation. "Greg?" I called out, my voice wavering. The silhouette remained still, its outline blurred against the darkening sky. There was no response, just that oppressive silence enveloping me, thick and suffocating. I took a cautious step toward the door. The air felt heavier, almost as if I was wading through something unseen. As I neared the entrance, I wanted to turn back, to retreat into the safety of the house. But something compelled me to go on. Just then, the figure turned its head, and I nearly screamed. The face was obscured, but I could see a faint glow in its eyes, two cold spots of light that felt like they were boring into my soul. My gut twisted with fear, and I stumbled back, colliding with the back of a chair in the kitchen. Then it spoke, but the words were muffled, indistinct. "Help!" It was a cry, but it didn't feel human. I shivered at the sound, feeling its grip tighten around my throat. "Help me!" I grasped the doorframe, feeling both anchored and trapped. "What do you want?" I shouted, my own voice echoing in the eerie quiet. The response was a thrumming noise, like a heartbeat, pulsating from the figure. Suddenly the shadows in the kitchen quivered, and I spotted movement behind the figure. A flash of white caught my eye. Another presence was emerging from the darkness, closer to me now. Panic surged anew. I was being surrounded. I turned to bolt back into the house, but froze again. A second piece of paper lay on the kitchen counter, stark against the grime. Driven by a mixture of dread and curiosity, I grabbed it. The words were hastily scrawled, echoing the essence of the first note. "They're coming for me. Don't let them take you." I barely had time to process it when a gust of wind swept through the doorway, extinguishing the lantern. The darkness felt alive. It enveloped me and snuffed out what little light remained. I was plunged into an abyss, but I could still hear that soft, haunting whisper, the original voice of the first figure. "Join us." I fumbled, trying to find something, anything to cling to, but the shadows felt like hands reaching out, pulling me closer. I gasped for air, desperately battling the weight bearing down on me. That's when I heard it. A third voice joined the whisper, a familiar one. "Help me." It was Greg's voice. Bursting with courage, I felt a spark ignite inside me. I had to find him. I took a deep breath and stepped forward into the dark, ready to confront whatever awaited me. The forces that had been watching and waiting were about to reveal their true nature. I just hoped I wouldn't lose myself in the process. The darkness felt thicker than before, wrapping itself around me like a cloak as I plunged forward. "Greg!" I called out again, my voice echoing through the oppressive gloom. The whispers mingled with my panic, swirling in a chaotic cacophony that seemed to breathe in sync with my heart. "Help me." I heard Greg's voice again, softer this time, threaded with desperation. I followed the sound, using it as a lifeline. I couldn't go back. It felt like a retreat, a surrender to whatever haunted these woods. Instead, I focused on the warmth of my memories, of our friendship. "I'm coming," I shouted, hoping he could hear me, hoping we weren't truly lost. Fingers reached out into the shadows, searching for anything tangible. Then, for a brief moment, there was light. A flicker illuminating the space ahead, just a glimpse of what might be on the other side. I pushed ahead, my breath catching in my throat, willing my legs to move faster. Shadows danced menacingly, but did not bar my path. Finally, I stumbled upon the outline of a figure, one that was hunched over and whispering urgently. "Greg!" I breathed, feeling the flickers deepen as I approached. The figure lifted its head, and illumination cascaded from an unseen source, clearing away parts of the darkness that had clung so firmly just moments before. "Ashley!" Greg's voice burst forth, and relief surged through my body. I rushed to him, arms reaching out, gripping his shoulders tight. "What happened?" I asked, glancing around as the whispers faded into silence. There was something unsettling about the space, a deflated unease that lay simmering just beneath the surface. "I don't know," he gasped, eyes wide with a terror reflected in my own. "I lost you in the basement, then everything went black. Those things—" His voice trailed off, but I understood. "They drew me in, Ashley. It was like I was drowning in whispers." "Me too," I admitted, catching a glimpse of something moving in the periphery of my vision. But when I turned, nothing was there. "What do we do now?" "I think—" He breathed heavily, shaking visibly. "I think we need to get out of here. Whatever those kids are, whatever this place is, we need to leave it behind." The weight of his words hung heavily. "But what about them?" I motioned toward the shadows where the laughter once replayed. The feeling of helplessness gnawed at me. What if some other lost soul ends up like us? We can't leave them. Greg hesitated, then his expression shifted. "Then we warn others. They can't be like us." He followed my gaze toward the nearly silent cabin that stood untouched by time. But we're not equipped to help them. We're barely keeping our heads above water. Feeling grounded for a moment, uncertainty sank in amidst the urgency of our situation. The woods outside felt like a world long forgotten, and the house wrapped its arms around us in a way that felt oddly protective, yet sinister. I looked toward the door, knowing we had to move, but torn with indecision. Those children, their faces in the photos, they were trapped here. We have to find a way to set them free. Are you serious? Greg's eyes flashed with disbelief. You think you can just set them free? They're dead, Ashley. No! I yelled, frustration boiling over. They're not! They were once kids, innocent. Maybe they still want help, need it. The shadows behind us stirred, as if sensing the conflict brewing between us. The laughter, once a soft whisper, returned, rising to a crescendo, insistent and haunting. It's now or never, I resolved, my heart thrumming in my chest. I stepped back into the room, daring to search the hidden corners as Greg followed hesitantly. We can't ignore them and leave. We have to know the truth. As we moved deeper into the gloom, raindrops began to fall outside, drumming against the roof, muffling the sense of urgency we carried. The temperature dropped further, momentarily deterring the shadows, allowing us to explore as distant flickers of light morphed in the air around us. We have to learn about these children, I stated, voice steadier now, as we rifled through the remnants of the past. There has to be something here, something to piece this all together. We dug through the remains we uncovered, memories of a time gone by sprawled across the floors, some pieces whispering of joy and carefree play, others clawing with hints of sorrow that whispered painfully through the air. Maybe the basement, Greg suggested suddenly, brow furrowed. There was that unset trunk. It felt important. Those voices— Yes! A flicker of understanding sparked in my mind as I recalled its rattling. It could reveal something critical. Let's go. We ventured back to the staircase, the silence lurking like a predator watching from the shadows. Unease gripped my stomach as we descended, barely breathing as we rounded the corner where we had previously found the cursed trunk. As the lantern flickered back to life in my hand, the trunk beckoned us forward, creaking open. I pulled away the rough cloth again, revealing more photographs. This time there was a name printed neatly across the stiff material. Ashley. My stomach twisted, memories colliding in disarray. They had my name, I whispered, breathless. Why? Greg's voice trembled, the room steeped in an eerie chill. I don't know, I murmured, a part of me hesitating to dig further. The shadows around us held their breath, watching, awaiting judgment. The sound of laughter split the air again, shivering between us as I turned back toward the trunk. We have to learn what happened, I pressed, to break the cycle. Okay, Greg said, visibly bracing himself, but we must be quick. We don't know what else is waiting for us in this dark. And with that, we delved deeper into the secrets of the house, a puzzle with pieces that tugged at the threads of reality itself. Unbeknownst to us, whatever lingered within the dark woods squeezed tighter, holding its breath, waiting for us to unlock the truth. I may never know what truly happened to those children, or whether they were trapped in memories or something far more sinister. The laughter grew louder, wrapping around us, threading through forever. But now, for better or worse, I understood. It was just the beginning.